Hello and welcome back to another garden update. We're now in June, another month down, and as you can see in the veg patch things are growing along quite nicely. That does include the weeds as well. So I'm just preparing the plot for a little bit more planting by taking some of these weeds out today. And what I'm going to be putting in is my pumpkins. So they've been growing away quite happily in the greenhouse now for a while. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that these are the ghost pumpkin variety, so they're going to be white, which I'm really excited about. I harvested these myself, my pumpkin that I carved last year, and I'm very excited to give them a go. I'm not sure how big they're going to be, but if pumpkins are anything to go by, they're going to be quite big plants. So my plan is to put them along the front bit here. Then if they do start getting very big and very long, what I can do is I can push them just over the side of the veg plot. A little bit of grass on the other side there that's not doing particularly well, so they can actually just grow quite happily along the edge there as well. So that's why I'm going to pop them in at the front. They also like a lot of sunshine, so that's the sunnier side of the veg patch, the further forwards and to the right hand side you go. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to add in lots of soil enricher. So pumpkins are particularly hungry, so before I actually get planting, I'm just going to dig over the front strip there where I'm going to plant them, add in lots of extra manure, and I'm going to try out a new product called Rocket Grow, which we've recently got in at the garden centre, and see how that goes. It's supposed to be very, very good and very nutritious for your plants. So that's the first thing, is I've weeded now, got rid of the worst of the weeds there. I'm going to give it a dig over, and I'm going to add in lots of compost, and as I said, some of this Rocket Grow mulch as well, to get the pumpkins off to a really good start. That's now nicely dug out. I'm going to add in some fresh compost and mix that in with the old compost that I've dug over. They're probably going to end up in a slightly raised trench, which is absolutely fine. In fact, the more nutrients you can pack in around the pumpkin's root system, the better. So I'm just going to get my compost now, and I'm going to grab my mulch as well. So then, as I said, to really get the pumpkins off to the best start, I'm going to enrich the soil as well using a mulch. And as I said, this is a new product that we've recently got in, and I was really interested to try it because it's organic, peat-free, and is made as a byproduct from creating renewable energy, an anaerobic power plant, and it's all made in the UK. So there's no air miles on it, and all you do with the mulch, be it manure or this or anything like that, is you apply a generous amount and mix it in really well. It's full of really great nutrients. It's going to help break up the soil a bit, add loads of nutrients in there, and get every plant off to a really good start. And you can apply it pretty much on anything, particularly veg plants. They're going to love having that mulch there with that extra little bit of nutrients. So I'm really hoping that because pumpkins are so hungry, that this is going to do them fantastically well to get them off to the best start. I'm wanting some really nice big pumpkins later in the year, so I'm going to carry on applying this magic mulch product now, and then I'm going to actually plant my pumpkins in. Now, as I mentioned before, these are going to be big plants, so I'm going to leave about a foot between my Brussels sprouts for the first one. That's going to come here, and it's important to make sure that however you've grown your pumpkins currently, that you dig out ample room so you're not squashing or breaking any of the roots, and that you're planting them at the same depth that they've been grown in to avoid them rotting off. So I've got my pumpkin plants here. They're a little bit leggy, a little bit drawn out unfortunately, where it's been quite hot of late, but they're fabulous strong plants, and they're going to be fantastic once they get going. Gently tip them up. You can see it's got a really lovely root system on there. If they're a little bit pot bound like mine, gently tease out some of the roots at the bottom. That will help them establish quicker. Like that, don't do too much. There we go. And make sure that, as I said, you plant it at the same depth that they've been growing, so that they don't rot where they sit in water. Like that. Firm in well, and that then gives you the opportunity to take off any damaged leaves. This one here looks like it's damaged unfortunately, so I'm going to whip that off in a second. And then the next one I'm going to plant a couple of feet to the right hand side of it, so that will then have space to grow that way, and this one can grow that way, and they won't be competing too much with each other. And that's it. If we're in a particularly dry spell, make sure to give them a really good soak. We are at the moment, so I'm going to give them a good soak with a hose now, just to get them settled in, and then feed them probably, I would say, once a week if you can, and keep them really well watered throughout their entire growth cycle, and they should provide you with some lovely big pumpkins later on in the season. And just a quick update on everything else that's happening in the veg patch. So obviously my last garden update, I planted out my early Onward peas and my dwarf climbing beans here. The peas, as you can see, doing fabulously well. They are now starting to wrap themselves around this frame, which is brilliant. I have tied some of them in just at the bottom to get them started, but now they're starting to actually send out these tendrils that are wrapping themselves around the cane. So they'll be at the top of this in no time at all, and I'd expect at this rate to see the first flowers within the next few weeks, I would have thought. The French beans seem to be struggling a little bit more. I'm not sure that they like the soil conditions, and I'm not sure whether they like being towards the back here, or it is a little bit darker. Some of them seem to be doing quite well and have established themselves, and they're starting to grow away, which is good to see. Others are struggling. It kind of looks like they're wilting. This one in the middle has unfortunately died. Not much you can do about that really. As I said, some of the stuff in this veg patch this year is just going to be pure trial and error while I get my head around what's going on in the soil. I'm hoping that the rest are going to be okay, but I'm not too sure about some of these ones around the front particularly. The ones at the back do seem to be doing a little bit better, so fingers crossed that they'll last at least, but I'm hoping that the rest will pull through. They'll get their roots in, they'll get themselves established, and then they'll happily start romping away. The Brussels sprouts that I planted a while ago, growth is slow, as you would expect. They're quite a slow growth crop anyway. You wouldn't be harvesting these Brussels sprouts now until later in the year, probably around well, at least the autumn really. So they are growing quite happily. There's lots of new leaves, they're looking very healthy. I'm going to cover them soon to stop any of the sort of cabbage whitefly problems and bits and pieces like that getting to them, but otherwise they're doing really well. The Jostaberry at the back here is doing okay. However, recently, since we've had the warm weather, it's become a bit leggy. You can see here the stems are quite drawn out. There's big gaps between each of the leaf nodes, so that's one to watch. I'm not sure if it's too dark for it here at the back now that the trees have come into leaf, and that's why it's starting to bolt forwards towards the light. I'm still hoping that we're going to get some flowers on it, but it's definitely going to need to be supported because these stems are just so long now. And what I'll do later in the year, once I've worked out whether it is going to flower and how it fruits, I will then have to cut it a bit and get it back into shape, and then decide what I'm going to do with it for next year. That's how it's looking in the veg patch. I need to get some new raspberries, but I won't do that until the autumn now. Unfortunately, those that I put in have definitely not rooted, and they've just rotted away, unfortunately, which is a shame. But as I said, trial and error, so we're gradually working through things, but it's great to see the peas being successful, some of the French beans, and the lettuces at the front are actually doing quite well as well. So fingers crossed it is going to be a productive year. Down here on the patio, things are really starting to burst into life now that we've had this fantastically warm start to June and end of May really. The grapevine that I've had for a long time, that I potted up last year, fed, and I've now got it training up our fence here, is looking really healthy. It's looking fantastic, and what I want to do with this is continue to train it up, hopefully up enough so that it reaches the balcony portion at the very top of the house there, but we'll see. It's quite small at the moment, it's only in a small pot. We'll have to repot it in a couple of years time once it's re-established itself. I've got hibiscus here. I can see some buds slowly starting to form on this, so it is on its way to hopefully flowering a bit later in the summer. The azaleas here, now I adopted these during lockdown last year when they had finished flowering and they were going to be discarded. I've potted them up into small containers and they've done really well. They hardened off last year, they stayed out all winter, and now they're coming into flower again. I've got these lovely, beautiful, kind of ruffled flowers that are bicolour, white and pink, looking really stunning, just coming into bloom at the moment. And then there's these here that are again a bicoloured flower that has red and white petals, really, really stunning. Now I don't know if you can see this, but on the red coloured ones, and I've got a plain white one here, they've gone a little bit yellow. And what that is because where they're in a container, they're really hungry for food. Make sure that if you're feeding rhododendrons, azaleas, camellias in pots, that you use an ericaceous feed that's high in iron normally, and what that means, it's going to increase the acidity in the soil, which means the azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias are going to maintain a healthy root system, and they're going to be able to access those nutrients in the soil. So I'm going to feed these with an ericaceous food now. I'm going to water it on. That will then give them a really good boost. It should hopefully correct this yellowing that's going on, and that will really push them to put on some lovely growth. I'm then going to repot them a couple of weeks after I've given them a feed, and that will then continue that boost through the year, and then hopefully by this time next year I'll have even bigger plants that will produce even more flowers. The Catalpa, the Indian bean tree behind me, is also bursting into life. In a few weeks time these leaves are going to be double that size. It's quite a vigorous grower. It's a really fun tree to grow. They get quite big, they're quite tropical, exotic looking, which is exactly the look I'm going for on my patio down here. Rich colours and big showy leaves. Now the other plant that's really come into its own and doing its thing is my peony. This is Bowl of Beauty. I've mentioned it before in my videos. It's looking absolutely fab, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buds coming on it, so it's going to put on a really fantastic show this year. And likewise with the azaleas, all the other plants I'm going to be feeding this week as well. Now that they've all come into growth, they've all put on this lovely new foliage, you don't want the plants to start suffering. They've used a lot of energy to do that, so now's the perfect time to feed them. So I'm going to be feeding all of these with a liquid feed, so that's an instant fertilizer that will get to work straight away. And then what I'll also do is I'll apply chicken manure pellets to the surface here. They will break down more gradually so that that feed continues to work for another few weeks. I'll keep then reapplying either a liquid feed or the chicken manure pellets probably fortnightly through the season to ensure all my container grown plants look their best and perform to the best that they can. One more thing I wanted to just quickly show you on the patio is this Grevillea. Now if you've watched my earlier videos going back some months now, you'll know that I was very excited about the fact that it was budding up, and that was months ago. Unfortunately some of those flowers didn't come to fruition through the cold weather. It's damp and wet, which it doesn't really like. However, we have now got some that have fully opened. They are absolutely beautiful. I am so pleased that they're flowering. These beautiful deep pink, almost red blooms that have come out on this plant are really tropical and exotic looking, and I hope that through feeding it this year, I'm probably going to repot it this year as well, we'll see those flowers become more abundant in subsequent seasons. I really hope so, because they are just looking fantastic. I just wanted to share that with you because I know I mentioned it in a video a long time ago, and they're finally here, which is very exciting for me. So that's it for this week's garden update. I hope you enjoyed it. Lots going on, as I said. I'm really hoping you're enjoying the weather and you've got some nice weather wherever you are too. I've got lots of great video content coming up, including growing wisterias in pots, as well as following on how the veg patch is progressing obviously throughout the rest of the year, which I hope will be really exciting and interesting. So do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future video updates, and if you want to keep up to date with everything else that's happening in my life, all my social links are in the box below as well. I'd love to hear what you're up to out in your gardens this week, and what you've got planned, so do also pop that in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks very much. Bye bye.